Hello fellow gaming minions, welcome back to my channel. Mario Kart 64 versus Diddy Kong Racing. Two exceptionally great games for the Nintendo 64 library. You know it, I know it, and I'm pretty sure even the haters of the N64 know it. I'm a bit behind with this video. What I do like about this Versus series is how I can just make gamers go head to head against each other. I haven't done this one since my Theme Hospital versus 2 Point Hospital. I thought if that video would have took off a bit, maybe I would have made this episode quite a few months ago and I would have been about 4th episode by now. I would have been on my 4th if more people would have been exposed to it. But it's not how YouTube works, especially with the algorithm of my channel, so I'm going to have to try and just keep up the grind as much as I can. Anywho, Mario Kart 64 was once pretty much named by a lot of people to be the greatest Mario Kart game they have ever played. Well, to be fair, up to this point in the history in the 90s, there was only in fact 2 Mario Kart games, so that's not really saying much, is it? Well, when this game was created at least, Mario Kart 64. Although over 20 years later, there is so much nostalgia embedded into the minds and hearts for those who have actually played this game and or grew up with it, myself included. It is the second best selling video game on the wonderful game system, the Nintendo 64. Well, it is wonderful and good to me, in my eyes. I couldn't care less about what the other negative Nancy's and their negative opinions are of the Nintendo 64. I like it. No, I love it. I love it! Being introduced into the 3D world of kart racing, it was indeed a game that gave many gamers good memories. So many good memories from both the solo gameplay and the multiplayer aspects of it. Pretty much the thing that I love about video games themselves, especially retro games. Goodness me, I cannot tell you how much fun times I have had playing on this game with family and friends on this wonderful little game, especially involved with the characters, the tracks and the music to listen to. Next, we have Diddy Kong Racing. Diddy Kong Racing was developed by my most favourite company back in the days of the good old 90s, Rareware, or Rare, and published by Nintendo. Once Diddy Kong was made, of course, I felt that there was going to be a little war brewing between the two games eventually, especially now that we are on YouTube. In this day and age, we can talk about the similarities, as they are both unique in their own way and sort of similar by design and in their gameplay. Not selling as many games on the N64 as it did with Mario Kart, however. It is not a testament to say that this game, Diddy Kong Racing, is a bad or lesser game that is of Mario Kart 64. No. Far from it. Diddy Kong Racing was a title to remember and was a good addition to the Nintendo 64 family regarding its content in the game. So, which game is better? Which game has more to offer? Which game is more fun? More importantly, which game do I prefer? Stay and watch and stick around as we go through the 3rd episode of my Versus series, fellow gaming minions. I welcome you all to Mario Kart 64 versus Diddy Kong Racing. Okay then, let us start with the very first thing of these two games, the story. Mario Kart 64's story is pretty much this. Certain Mario Kart characters just race. That's it. There is no struggle between good and evil, no struggles to control the Mushroom Kingdom from Bowser or something. No saving the world kind of story. It's strictly a one-dimensional thing, just to see who can race the best and who's better at the race karting skills. That's it. I know. Sounds like the thrill of a lifetime for a game that managed to sell so well on the N64, right? But that's what Mario Kart 64 offers in terms of its plot or story, so it is very monotonous in that regard. The story for Diddy Kong Racing is as follows. Timber the Tiger's parents go on holiday, or vacation for my American viewers, and leave Timber in charge of the island. Bills and rent are paid, I assume. And so Timber invites some of his friends to have a little bit of fun with racing. However, the evil, menacing Whizpig, my throat, ow, plans to take over the island. That being said, he is not alone in this endeavour. Accompanying him are his fellow henchmen. I call them henchmen because they're not exactly men, but they're henchmen. I like to call them henchmen, even if they may not be, so I'm going to call them henchmen, alright? In their allocated domains. They are Tricky, the Triceratops, the boss of the Dino domain, Bluey, the Walrus, the boss of Snowflake Mountain, Smokey, the Dragon, the boss of the Dragon Forest, and Bubbler, the Octopus, boss of Sherbet Island. These henchmen protect their 4 distinctive worlds that separate each race world from one another. So it is up to you, or one of 8 characters, of whom you may choose to try and stop them. And there you go, folks. That is the story or plot of Diddy Kong Racing. Not exactly Shakespearean levels of quality, but it is something, and something is much better than nothing. And so, in this specific case, point goes to Diddy Kong Racing. Okay, here we go on to the next thing to talk about these 2 video games, the gameplay. So, in Mario Kart 64 you're introduced to 4 different circuits which are in the titles of 4 different cup names. You have the Mushroom Cup, the Flower Cup, the Star Cup and the Special Cup. Each cup has a variety of different tracks that vary in design. You have your standard raceway circuits, to a lovely beach track, a desert train track, and who could forget the rainbow and space track, among other designs. Before you start each race, you are introduced to 3 difficulties, 50cc being the slowest, 100cc being normal, and 150cc being the fastest. What is noticeable during your races is the use of your item boxes during your placements of the race. If you are good enough to lead the race in first place, you don't get many good weapons as would you say trailing behind, say like in 5th or 6th place, as you would be more likely to be introduced to the banana weapon, multiple banana weapon that is, the invincible star, the lightning, and the red shells, and all the green shells, or maybe even for the dreaded blue shell that strikes down the person in first place, as we all know. The objective of the races is to finish first place as much as possible and to lead in the overall score tally at the end of each race or by the end of the GP to earn your gold cup. I also noticed another thing in this game, the rubber banding. Yes, rubber banding keeps the challenging factor up for this game, but the amount of rubber banding in this game used to really get me annoyed. I felt that the only time mushrooms were actually useful in this game were when you used them off-road to cut some time off your racing. They did not feel useful when using them to try and get ahead of other racers or get away from them, or really just to use them to catch up. Not even the golden mushroom felt useful in this game, regardless of how many times I broke that Z button to actually keep using the thing. I noticed that the bananas work strangely sometimes too when you use them against other people. Sometimes when you hit a banana, you either skid your karts at the accelerated pace you were going when you're slowing down after you hit it, or you just stop entirely. Sometimes it was just like a random thing. Another thing that I noticed while playing Mario Kart 64 is the fact that the CPU, or AI, used certain items. Not all items, as I have never ever witnessed the CPU used any of the shells, red, green or blue, before in this game. So pretty much on those tracks featuring the bouncing green shells around stages with probably no drop pits are all from you. And the red shells, oh, the red shells are some of the most useless shells in this game, as I have witnessed and experienced, especially when it comes into homing in on the enemies to stop them in their tracks. They sometimes just fly straight into the wall. So much for a good homing beacon, huh?
Oh, you useless piece of red rubbish.
Someone needs to tell the programmers or designers of the game a bit of a malfunction, that is. Another thing to note is that when you hit the enemies off screen, say if they're further in the draw distance, whether it's with mostly with the shells, let's say the shells for example, they just shudder, as opposed to taking the full force of the shell that knocks them into the air, like what you get when you get hit by a shell. Mostly the red shells knock into the air, usually the green shells are just whatever. So they should be taking it as if you would be taking it when you get knocked into the air. You know, that sort of thing. Not really fair, is it? With Diddy Kong Racing, you are introduced to 16 tracks split between 4 worlds that vary from each other. But there is a surprise with these worlds. More on that later. Only the differences between Diddy Kong Racing and Mario Kart 64 when it comes to the racing itself is the fact that on many tracks you have the option to race in a kart, a hovercraft, or take it to the skies in an aeroplane. I think that is awesome, being given the choice of being able to race in different vehicle types. Diddy Kong Racing also has another thing that Mario Kart 64 does not have, and that, my friends, is in fact a hub world. As you progress through the hub world and take on the objective of winning each race and take home the gold, and also taking on the bosses of each said world after you have finished the races, it does give you more to do after that, seeing as your ultimate goal is to reach Wizpig and beat him. You are therefore introduced to the 8 silver coin challenge, so you can beat the bosses a second time, but on a much harder difficulty, and unlock pieces of the Wizpig amulet to race Wizpig. So it is a challenge to spice up your race driving skills within the game. The items or weapon items in Diddy Kong Racing are formed in balloons. Each balloon colour represents a different item or weapon that you can use while racing. Red balloons are for missiles, blue coloured balloons are for the speed boosts, yellow balloons are for the shields, as well as other coloured balloons for other different uses too. When a racer is to pick up the same colour balloon twice, it is then upgraded to the second level of that specific colour that you picked up. If you pick up the same colour balloon for the third time in a row, it is in its maximum form. Each upgraded weapon or item can either change or ruin in a tide of your favour. If used correctly or smartly, or can ruin your race by accidentally choosing the wrong colour at a certain time in a race, or you just picked up the item or weapon that you don't need at a specific moment in time. This adds so much to the game with these simple upgrades, because of the fact that anything can happen around any corner that can change the game for you, whether to win or lose. Also in Diddy Kong Racing, there is something else at your disposal to help you, whether you're in first place or last place, and that is the speed boosters. Using the speed boosters is actually helpful, and it actually feels like you do catch up and cut time off of catching up to other racers in the game that you are trailing behind. It shouldn't be a secret by this point, but when I was playing this back in the day, I found that if you let go of the accelerator at the point before you hit a speed booster, you actually go faster. I usually do the same thing with speed boosters you collect from the blue coloured balloons as well. Point goes to Diddy Kong Racing. With the variety of weapons and their upgrades, and with the hub world to explore, I believe that this is a great addition to add to this specific racing game. And I won't deny that it just adds extra content, which has given me amazing fun times, and also feels like a really good challenge to face against other bosses as well as other drivers on the road. Righty then, now let's talk about the next thing that is involved in both these awesome games, the music. The music for Mario Kart 64 has been with me since my childhood. The music for this game is a thing of beauty, especially for the end credits when you've actually completed the game. That soundtrack has stayed with me for all of these years, and being subjected to that amazing score once I actually finished the game back in the day, and ever since then, left a good impression on me. It was like as if it was saying to me, good job Mel. You did very well. Give yourself a pat on the back, and we cannot wait to see you on the next karting experience. But that opening soundtrack, oh my goodness me. That's where the magic flowed for me each time I booted up the game for the past 2 decades. Rev up your gaming hands and get those controllers to start the fun with that main menu music also. The differentiation between the soundtracks in Mario Kart 64 fits the stages, or each stage, rather well, as they have their own personality to them. You have the amazing Rainbow Road, Calamari Desert, Koopa Troopa Beach, Bowser's Castle, Toad's Turnpike. Sadly though, not every track has its own unique song or soundtrack. The raceway circuits and Wario Stadium all have the same music. The same goes for Moo Moo Farm and Yoshi's Island, Sherbet Land and Frappe Snowland. I'm not sure if this had something to do with the limitations of the Nintendo 64 kart, but I would have loved these stages, well, every single stage, to have had its own unique soundtrack that differentiates it from each other, that you can easily distinguish just by the audio alone. So Mario Kart 64 got a little bit lazy with the soundtrack department, considering the fact some of the stages actually have the same, or share the same soundtrack, which is a bit of an unfortunate thing to be honest. But for what it did give, for all of those different tracks that actually have their own unique soundtracks from each other, and the music around all of the game itself was a thing of splendour, and I absolutely love listening to them. Diddy Kong Racing soundtrack. Well, what can I say about the upbeatness of the soundtracks in Diddy Kong Racing? Charming as charismatic are just 2 words of what I can describe the music in this game. Whether you listen to the different character musical screen scores on the character select screen menu, which vary in instruments, which by the way is totally awesome.
I'm Diddy! Whoa! My name's Bumper. Oh.
I'm Banjo. Whoa!
Because it feels like it's given these characters their own personality to suit your journey. Or listening to the elephant's Indian-esque sort of soundtrack in the hub world to select by selecting your vehicle.
The genie of the island. I'm here to help you. Good luck.
Whoa!
Hello, friend. Select your vehicle. Abracadabra.
There is definitely plenty of to listen to from start to finish. Transitions between the musical worlds for each stage sets up a nice soundtrack as a whole for Diddy Kong Racing, being that the musical composition varied from stage to stage that ultimately fits the stages. Although if I was to listen to a particular soundtrack while blindfolded, I don't think I would immediately tell which stage it is actually from. The same cannot be said for Mario Kart 64 however, and to be quite frank and honest, at very first I did not think much of the music from Diddy Kong Racing, whether or not comparing it to Mario Kart 64's music. Although the music is upbeat and charming, I just never found myself remembering the tracks or carrying off to remember. Although saying that, I'm not saying that the music from Diddy Kong Racing is bad. No, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that whatsoever. It just wasn't really all that memorable for me back in the day. Even now, unless I'm actually playing them and then I hum along to the tunes. I will also say that Diddy Kong Racing is also guilty of what Mario Kart 64 is also guilty of when it comes to music sharing between the levels and stages. Because there are some tracks in this game that share the same music, such as Everfrost Peak and Snowball Valley, Pirate Lagoon and Treasure Caves, Greenwood Village and Windmill Plains, and Star City and Space Dust Valley. Given how dynamic each track's music is from each other, with its upbeatness and chirpy vibes, I was rather surprised at this, to be honest with you. I actually thought they could have added quite a bit more music to these specific tracks. They're really good. So for this one, points goes to Mario Kart 64 and Diddy Kong Racing. Even though some stages share the same music, I cannot let that defect or take away from the fact that they both offer some great music and vibes for their respected levels from both games. So point goes to each game. Alright then, now let's start on the next thing about these two games, the graphics. Mario Kart 64 has 2D sprites in a 3D generated environment. That's right, 2D sprites, as opposed to 3D character models. This was due to the fact that the N64 karts could actually only store so much in its memory banks. So to alleviate that problem, as opposed to taking up too much memory on it, 2D sprites was the way to go forward for Mario Kart 64. That is a design limitation. But what about when the characters turn around or when they skid their cart on a banana? You're probably thinking. Well, yes. Using a high polygon model for the character, Nintendo would then use those sprites by animating them and rotating the character model. Then format those pre-rendered images with, of course, limiting the size and colours to fit on the N64 cartridge. So I can see how confusing that is at first, because as kids we were led to believe that Mario Kart 64 is fully 3D with everything in the game. But now, you know different. But as a kid, I did question whether it was fully 3D or if it was just the way the graphics were at the time. But enough with the technical things. Mario Kart 64's graphics are beautiful to look at regarding its colours and its environment. I do love the fact that for each Mario Kart character, every character has their own coloured karts. I think that was actually a nice touch to the game. But what I also like in the game is that each stage in the game ranges from a dirt bike sludge sort of environment to an orangey desert to a colourful consistent rainbow in the black night. The range is great in Mario Kart 64. Diddy Kong Racing has fully 3D rendered characters in a beautiful coloured environment that circulates this very game. Each world with its tracks is endowed with variety of its beautiful scenery, both in a daytime, evening or in a nighttime setting. You have a Christmas stage, or coasted along the wonderful blue ocean water in the water stages. You even have stages that have lava flowing through it. A stage even featuring a dinosaur in your path of the race. That's pretty awesome with what Diddy Kong Racing has. Yeah, after all these years I do feel lied to that Mario Kart 64 character models are not 3D, but that doesn't take away from my overall enjoyment of the game. It still has lovely graphics to actually look at in this game. I do feel like that Diddy Kong Racing is actually superior in this department with its character models and the 3D environment to go with it. So, point goes to each. Now let's talk about the last thing that these two games offers: unlockables. From what I remember on my time playing on Mario Kart 64 is that the only unlockable thing in this game is in fact the mirror mode, and sadly no new characters that they could have added to the roster, and no new stages to race on either. Such a shame, because it would have been nice for you to have actually had new levels or new characters to play on or play with or race on, to actually feel like, yes, okay, after all my achievements of achieving all the gold medals, it would have been nice addition to the game and feel like you've actually earned something. But I guess in Mario Kart 64, mirror mode will do. Remember earlier when I said that Diddy Kong Racing will have a surprise in its tracks? Well, there are 4 extra unlockable tracks to unlock after you defeat Wizpig for the first time, in which you will be introduced into the new world, or the 5th world, Future Funland. Also in Diddy Kong Racing, you can unlock 2 extra characters, Drumstick and TT, one of which of course is much easier to get than the other, seeing as to unlock TT you have to defeat all of his time trials in the game. That's easier said than done, because unlocking this guy was extremely difficult for me back in the days when I actually tried to beat all of those time trials in Diddy Kong Racing, hence why I could not do it. But luckily I actually knew someone personally who actually did have TT, and I was wondering how on earth he managed to unlock this character. So it is possible to actually unlock TT. Let's face it, guys and girls, Mario Kart 64 does not offer much in terms of its unlockables, which is a right shame to be honest. And that's whether or not you're comparing it to Diddy Kong Racing. It still doesn't offer much in terms of its unlockables. Diddy Kong Racing does have more to offer, thank goodness for that. So point goes to Diddy Kong Racing. And that is it, fellow gaming minions. Thank you very much for watching my 3rd episode, Mario Kart 64 versus Diddy Kong Racing for the Nintendo 64. I do apologise, it's taken me a while to make this video, but these videos do take time, and I've had quite a few busy weeks, you know, making this video. Well, not weeks making it, but I've actually had, like, you know, other things to do and stuff. But yeah, I look forward to seeing you for my 4th episode. I don't know what my 4th episode will be, and I'm not going to tell anybody what it's going to be. I'm just going to bring it out, and before it's actually made, I'm going to say what it is. Or maybe you guys could vote. Maybe you'll be interested to see what a vote would be. I could actually make a poll of what my 4th or 5th episode would be. So I'd like to apologise again for taking my time with this video. Thank you very much for watching, fellow gaming minions. Hopefully you enjoyed. I enjoyed creating this video. It does take time, as I say, but I look forward to seeing you again. I'm Dr. Virtual, the greatest gamer in the multiverse. You take care of yourselves, and may retro gaming live on.